Hello, welcome to this video lecture. I'm Dr. Melanie Gigarat, and let's talk about methods of data collection. Our objectives, actually its objective, is to discuss the different methods of collecting data, and the other one is also to discuss the different sampling techniques. But our focus for this lecture is only to discuss the different methods of collecting data. So if you still recall our definition of what is statistics, so we mentioned in our previous videos that it is a science that involves a research process from collection of data, organization and presentation of data, analysis and interpretation of data. So in this video, we will talk about the things that you need to consider before you can collect your data. And that is, what method do you need to conduct or rather to use for you to come up now with your data. So here is the list of the different methods. So we have the interview method, followed by the questionnaire, empirical observation, test, registration, mechanical devices, and experiment. So for the first method, interview method, we can actually conduct interview method either using direct interview or indirect interview. For the direct interview, obviously, it is a face-to-face encounter between the interviewer and then the interviewee. It is a good method to use if you have a very few questions to ask or if information needed is minimal. And it is also applicable if you have less than 30 individuals because direct interview is considered costly and time consuming, especially if you will consider a very large number of respondents. So it is costly in a way that, of course, you have to make sure that you have your budget whenever your respondents is from different places. So you have to go there. You have to arrange the schedule of your the interview and all other things that you need to consider. So it's also time consuming because it depends on the available time of the respondent. And aside from that, after gathering the information that you need, you also need to give time for you to transcribe the data. That is to record or rather to write it in written document the conversation between you and the respondent. So it's really time consuming. While if you're going to use indirect interview, that is that it is not face to face because you're going to use maybe telephone, cell phone, or right now we can also use other social media. We can use Zoom, you can use Google Meet and all other social media that it is possible to have this conversation. The problem with indirect interview is that it's not considered proper and polite. And if you're going to use telephone or cell phone, you might not be talking to the correct or to the right person. So you do not have now a ways on how to see how what is the reaction of your respondents and all other things that needs to be visible whenever you are gathering your data. So between direct and indirect interview, of course, it's better to use direct interview. And then number two, so you can also use questionnaire. So questionnaire is a list of well-planned questions written on paper, which can be also administered personally or through mail. So just like interview, it can also be direct or indirect interview. For questionnaire, it can be personally or through mail. But of course, personal is again better than using mail. And we have several forms of questionnaires or rather asking questions. So you can write a question that is considered a guided response type. This is when the respondent is guided in making his or her reply. Example of this question is asking, for instance, if the student is enrolled in statistics subject. So for example, you have a separate question for those who are enrolled in the statistics and those who are not enrolled in stat. So let's say the question goes this way. Are you enrolled in the statistics? If yes, proceed to item number 2. If no, proceed to item number 5. While for number 2, the recall type, so this is actually asking the profile information or the demographic informations about your respondent. So such as asking for age, name, sex, civil status, and all other demographic profile. While for recognition type, these are questions asking the respondents to recognize a figure or a word and others. So this is commonly seen in questions like asking which of the following is not correctly spelled. So, or which of the following figures represent circle. So it's a recognition type of question. So it involves figures, it involves words, and all other similar conditions. While for the next one, we have dichotomous type. For dichotomous type, so from the word that die, it means that we only consider two options. So questions asking, for instance, like, do you live alone? Answerable by yes or no. Questions answerable by true or false. Or if you're going to limit the option into agree, disagree, correct, and then wrong. So if you will limit it into two options, then we call that type of question as dichotomous type. While for multiple choice types, so you are very much familiar with this because you, of course, encounter this when you take tests in major, in your first term, second term exam, or periodical exams in your basic education. So in multiple choice type of questions, you are given usually four options, and then you have to choose the best answer, or the answer, there's only one answer. So the best answer. While for multiple response type, you are provided with several options, and you can also give two or more responses. So like, for example, if you are asked questions like, uh, what gadgets do you own? So you can have either tablet, cell phone, laptop. So all the gadgets that you have can be checked. So you can have more than two answers. While for free response type, this is similar to essay type of questionnaire. So the respondent is not guided in giving reply. So example of this is asking you to describe yourself. So you have different ways of answering that question. So it can be that you're going to focus on your demographic profile and when you answer that, or it can also be you focus on your characteristics, your hobbies, your telling something about your work, telling something about your personal life, and all other information. So because of course it's not guided, so it's called free response type. So it's an essay type of question. And then the next one is the rating scale type. So the purpose on answering the questionnaire, so you are asked to, or rather your respondent is asked to evaluate or to rate something like the attitudes towards mathematics. So these are the questionnaire that involves, for example, numbers from 1 to 4, where 1 corresponds to strongly disagree, and then 2 corresponds to disagree, 3 is agree, and 4 is strongly agree. So it can also be a questionnaire that is answerable by always, often, sometimes, never. So you guide your respondent. So you have your scale. So it's called rating scale type. Okay, next. So the next method is empirical observation method. So this is based now on your senses. So it can be obtained through what you hear, what you see, this is taste, what you taste, what you touch, and what you smell. And it is commonly used in psychological and anthropological studies, and not, of course, in a survey questionnaire. So this involves, it can be living or non-living respondents or organisms. So just like, for instance, in anthropologists, when they are in the field and they found some artifacts, so sometimes they have uh, to see if there is a sound produced. They have to see what are the things that are visible in the documents or in an object that they found, or they also smell or taste and all other things similar to that case. Actually, this can also be used in product development, maybe in business courses, just like when they develop food products, wherein they have to assess now if the taste is good, the smell is good. So it has something to do with the things that you have to also consider in evaluating foods. And then next, test method. So this is widely used in psychological research and psychiatry. It is a standard test like the one given when you enrolled in this school. So you are asked to take IQ test. So example of test methods is the IQ test that you took when you entered the school or when you enrolled in the school. So in this type of test, the instrument is already valid, reliable, and of course, it is also usable. Then next, registration method. So if you're going to gather now information that involves that is governed by laws, or it has something to do with registration, just like NSO, birth certificate rather, death certificate, license. So data obtained from NSO, LTO, DepEd, CHED, and all other organizations or agencies is called the registration method. So in school, if you need the official list that the registrars submitted, then you have, of course, to ask permission to the registrar, and that is called now registration method because the data will come from the registrar's office. And then we have the mechanical device. This is the use of technology or mechanical devices such as camera, projector, videotape, tape recorders, and others. So in chemical, biological, and medical researches, aside from the mentioned technology, they also use other devices like microscope, weighing scale, CT scan, and other. But of course, you have to consider that you are using the appropriate mechanical devices for you to gather your data. Okay, thank you for listening.